Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We tried to finish George Herbert's poems. We dealt with the Easter rings, and now we are to deal with the collar. Two of his poems are important in our course. I'd like to remind you with George Herbert and how he lived his life, because he reflects the kind of life that he had lived with his own and poetry. If you remember, we said that Herbert lived as a person who worked and served in the church, and he was an orator and a priest and a rector. All these posts have been occupied by him in the church throughout his lifetime, and two or three of his features of his poetry that he draws most of his images from nature, music, and the church. He refers to the church in most of his poetry. He pays great attention to form, and in most of his poems there is a correspondence between form and content. His kind of conceit is different than what we had in John Donne, because his conceit is implied by the whole poem, as we witnessed in Easter Wings and as we're gonna see in the Collar. And he paid special attention to titles, where the title reflects much of the topic or the theme of the story, as the Collar represents. Most of his poems deal with his inner conflicts as a priest. This is important because now we're gonna see a real portrayal of a conflict that the poet lived in the Collar. From the very beginning, the poet tries to evoke something through the title, the collar. The collar means what? The collar in Arabic means الياقة of a shirt or a t-shirt or something. And in a Christian religion, if you notice a priest and the kind of clothes that they used to wear, if you remember in movies, you can see that a priest in a church normally wears something black, and there is a little bit of white color that appears on his neck, and this is called the collar of the priest, which distinguishes him, or which makes him something different than others. Here the poem talks about a conflict. We are living in the mind of the poet. So it is a kind of a dramatic monologue, a psychological speech that the poet, as if he sits somewhere and talks with himself about, well, why did I do that? And why don't I do that? So a kind of a dramatic monologue which reflects the poet's feelings and emotions about his life. I struck the board. If you notice, the poet starts with the first person a pronoun which refers to himself as the poet. I struck the board. The board means اللوحة, a kind of a place where announcements are made, where instructions are put. Even in the university, we have a board in which we use to declare something or announce something. So I struck the board and cried no more, in a moment of rebellion, as if he says, well, stop it, I don't want to do this anymore, stop. So I struck the board and cried and yelled and shouted, hey, stop, I will not do that anymore. I will abroad, I'll quit this job, I will not do this thing anymore. When we talk about this, we remember the poet as a priest, because in his life he served as a priest in a church. What? Shall I ever sigh and pine? Shall I continue with my suffering? Shall I sigh, inhale in a moment of feeling that he is missing something, that he feels that something is lost from him, and pine, as you see the translation here, is long for and miss. miss something, that something does not or is not available in my life. My lines and life are free, free as the road. My lines and life. Lines and life refer to the current situation of the poet, to his own life, are free as the road, a kind of simile. The poet compares his life just like a road which has a beginning and it has no end. And the poet is free where to drive, where to ride. So this is a kind of simile we have here. Loose as the winds. This is the comparison between the life of the poet and the road and the wind. A wind, why does he refer to the wind? Because the wind is free to go wherever it wants. So there is no commitment, there is no complication or obstruction in front of the wind to stop it. So the poet feels that he is just like the wind, that he could move wherever he wants, and there is no restraints, or there are no restraints, or there are no obstructions that stop the poet from moving here and there. The speaker, let's talk about the speaker itself, himself. As large as a store, which is spacious, which is very big, very huge. Shall I be still in suit? Then a question again. Suit means the suit that priests wear. That because priests normally wear a certain kind of uniform and they are not supposed to take it off while they are serving at the church. Have I no harvest but a thorn? This first part of the poem talks about the poet's life as a priest, where he lived as a priest. So, as you see here, the poet dreams of leading his life just like a road which has no end, or just like the wind which cannot be stopped or obstructed by anything. But the current situation is he is not like that. He lives just as a priest, and he is in a suit, and he is imprisoned in that kind of job. Have I no harvest but a thorn? A harvest, yani something that we get, something that we earn, that we win. Do not I receive anything but thorns? فقط الأشواك. Here it's a metaphor for thorns, are metaphorical speech for our word for the hardships, the obstructions, the bad moments of life, because the priests, as the poet portrays them, live a hard and difficult life. Don't I have like pleasures, like happiness, only the thorns to let me blood, to let me suffer, to push me to live a difficult life, and not restore what I have lost with cordial fruit? And there is nothing, there is no pretext, there is no solution that I could restore the life I used to live before, the life I used to live before I become a priest. Because when you live as a priest, you should be committed to the instructions and the teachings of the church, and you should stop from doing certain things like having relationships, drinking, eating anything. So there are certain restrictions that the priests should follow while they are doing their job as a priest. Sure, there was. Look here, to let me blood and not restore what I have lost at the past with cordial fruit. Sure, there was wine. There was in the past when he wasn't a priest. There was wine before my size dried, before my commitment to priesthood, before my becoming a priest, dried that kind of wine. There was corn there before my tears did drown it. Before, yani, these are removed from his life, the wine and the corn. Why these two specific objects? Because we are talking about 16th, 17th century, 1630 something, 33, and the poet lived at that era, and that era was, there's no pizza and hamburger, of course. Their food was a kind of a simple food like corn, bread of corn or something, and a wine. This is a kind of luxurious food for people at that time. There was wine at the past before he is committed to the church. For my sighs did dry it, and there was corn before my tears did drown it. Is the year only lost to me? Am I the only person that feel that time is spent for nothing, for trivial reason? Am I the only person that feels that the value of time is gone, that time does not have any value? Have I no base to crown it? Don't I have any kind of base, as you see, إكليل الغارة, kind of flowers? No flowers, ورود, no garlands, gay. Gay means happy. No garlands, garland أيضا تاني إكليل الزهور. يعني a bouquet of flowers. All of these things are gone, are wasted. So the poet misses these kind of pleasure that he used to have before he is committed to priesthood at the church.